Rebecca Lester, who's the Director for SURF, but also the Program Lead for the Knowledge Hub. Rebecca's going to talk about Pasture 365. Can more diverse pastures build resilience to support 365 days of feed production? Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, David. As David said, I, like many people here in the room, have a bit of a dual hat for today. I am the lead of the Knowledge Broker team here at Deakin University, as you've heard, but I'm also the program lead for the Pasture 365 program. And as Rebecca was speaking, I was thinking I should have gone first because our project is at the very beginning. And so I have many fewer details to share with you about some of the outcomes, but hopefully you'll get a bit of a sense of what we're looking to achieve within this program and a interest in coming back in the future to hear what we've managed to achieve over that time. So the Pasture 365 project is one that has been funded under the Future Drought Fund's long-term trials program. And so, as we've already heard, the Future Drought Fund has an amazing interest and commitment to longer-term projects that enable us to be able to really provide much more solid and robust advice and data going forward. And so this project is actually funded for 5 years and we kicked off in about November last year. So we're really in the very early days, but I think that it's a really exciting program that will have a lot of interesting outcomes as we go forward. The overarching aim for the project is to measure whether diverse pastures result in a longer growing season for those pastures and to try to close that summer feed gap that many of our grazing industries experience. In our regional consultations, we heard from many of the people who we're speaking to who have grazing enterprises that concern about how are they actually going to be able to feed their stock through summer, particularly during some of the drier summers, is one of the primary concerns that they have for both their business as a whole, but also affecting their well-being within that community. And so this project is directly aimed to look at that. We've been pretty ambitious. We've got 9 long-term trial focal sites that we are spread across 4 states, and that represents the southern temperate grazing system within Australia. So it's Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, and also Southwest WA. And we're spread across 3 different industries: sheep, beef, and dairy in those regions. One of the things that we have been, I hope, quite innovative about is that we're looking to include an additional 5 satellite sites for each of those 9 sites. And those are intended to be local farmers who are interested in the trials and would like to be involved from the beginning, and to include one of the interventions that we are seeking to implement at the major trial sites, which I think has a couple of different benefits. That means that we, firstly, from a statistical point of view, from anyone who has a bent in that direction, dramatically increases the power of the project that we're able to put forward. We go from 9 to 54 sites, so that's a pretty huge difference. But it also has a really fantastic benefit in terms of being able to connect the project to the community and to those industries from the very beginning. And so that means that the champions that Rebecca was talking about will be being developed as we implement these trials. And we also will have the ability to sense check the interventions that we have. If they don't work from the perspective of a commercial grazing enterprise, well, they're no good to us. It doesn't matter how effective they are if they're too complex or too costly to be implemented by those individuals. The third thing that it does is it actually enables us to explicitly measure any impact of well-being of being a part of that trial. So we've got the National Centre for Farmer Health on board. They are going to be explicitly following the farmers who are engaged in these trials to see whether there are benefits or not associated with having that pasture gap closed during the trials. So it means that we can have a really holistic and end-to-end program. One of the other things that I think is a real strength of the program that we've designed is that we are seeking to engage the traditional owners in many of those focal sites. We're really keen, as the opening video suggested, to be able to understand what some of the traditional knowledge in those regions are. Many of these groups have very successfully managed these lands for 40,000+ years. And so clearly they have identified ways of being able to deal with the climate variability within those regions. And so the interventions that we're looking at do explicitly include native species as well as some of our more common pasture species that we're used to dealing with. So just to give you a little bit of an idea how the project design is going to work, we have 9 of these focal sites. These are predominantly either university-owned sites or state government-owned sites, particularly here in Victoria with AgVic, some of the smart farms. We also have some of the state government farms in southern Western Australia as well, with DPIRD coming on board. Each of these sites will be fully instrumented. So we'll be looking at soil moisture, soil quality, pasture growth, pasture quality, in measuring all the weather in those systems as well. And each of those will have multiple interventions. So we've put a lot of work into designing different pasture mixes. We've separated the sites into high and low rainfall. So we have different pasture mixes recommended for each of those. And these focal sites have, on the whole, 4 different treatments that are being applied, looking at a range of different pastures, as I said, with things like the native species involved as well. And then the local responses are being measured at each of those sites. One of the nice things is that we have been able to tailor what is being measured at those different sites. The different groups who are running the trial sites have some different priorities. They have different industries, they've got slightly different climates. And so that means that the things that they're keen to measure are a bit different at all of the sites. So we have a baseline of common things that are being measured everywhere. And then we have these additional things that are being measured. So for example, bush heritage is particularly interested in some of the biodiversity benefits that might arise from this. So they're really focusing some of their extra measurements on that, whereas Pasture in South Australia are interested in the feed quality that arises from these. So they're doing some extra measurements around what that quality of feed is across the different trials. And so that'll give us some really nice extra information that won't necessarily be applied everywhere, but can give us some really interesting hints as to how effective these different trials are. Then, as I said, we're going to have these 45 individual farmers who are coming on board. We've had really great initial interest so far, although ironically, how dry it has been this year has been a little bit of an impediment for people actually being able to be included yet. So we've pushed back the start of including those farmers a little bit, given that many of the regions that we're working in actually have some significant feed gaps right now. And so that means that they're a little bit more focused on where that feed is going to be coming from. But hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, we will have most of those farmers coming on board and being able to plant some of the recommended interventions that we have. These are going to be really minimally instrumented. We want to get those baseline measurements that are consistent across everything. That means that we do get that additional knowledge that we can use to have a broader, extrapolation of what those findings might look like elsewhere. As I said before, they will have a single intervention on each of those farms, and we will be measuring some of the local responses. These are also the ones where we will be doing those measurements of well-being. And then all of that wrapped together is intended to come together in a decision support tool. So the idea is very much to have a legacy from this project. We want to make sure that individual farmers within that Southern Temperate System can get onto the decision-making tool, put their own location in, understand from the soils and from the climate and from what some of them, perhaps the future climate projections are going to look like, how effective each of those different interventions is going to be for their context, and that they can then make the best decision for their enterprise in their location and what's going to work best for them. So as I said, our focal sites are spread pretty far and wide. We are going to, I think, be doing a lot of travelling as we go through the next 5 years to be able to see all of those. You can see the mixture of different, ownership of those different farms. We even have some that are on private farms. And we have, I think, got off to a pretty cracking start in terms of the progress that we've made so far. We have all of our focal sites selected. We've got all of our interventions designed. Our monitoring programs are designed to be consistent where they need to be across all of those different sites. Planting is underway. I think we've actually had a few that have planted over the last week or so with some of the rain that we've had. Again, people have had to be a little bit flexible given the very dry autumn that we have had in much of that region that I was just showing you. We are identifying our satellite sites and bringing them online. We've actually had some approaches from others. King Island is one example where there are groups who would like to come on board as another focal site. So we've got the opportunity to potentially even expand even in these early days of the project, which is fantastic. Wellbeing assessments are ready to go. We've got all our ethics approval and that's just waiting for those satellite sites to come on board. And we're well and truly into the design of what that decision support is going to look like and what the modelling that is going to underpin that looks like. So just to give you a little bit of an idea about some of the variability, this is Turnip Creek. This is one of the focal sites in Victoria. This is a catchment that has a very engaged group of farmers. There's about 5 different landholders in this catchment. They're all on board in terms of being able to participate in the trial. And so we have a real focus here on that native grasslands. They actually have some existing established native grasslands that they're grazing at the moment. And we want to really focus on some of those biodiversity benefits, as well as catchment rehydration. They're keen to keep the moisture that falls into the catchment in the catchment for longer and not just have that, I guess, wash straight through in the Turnip Creek. Another one of our existing sites is at Katanning I keep saying New South Wales, I don't know why I do that, Western Australia. And that one is run by DPIRD, the state government agriculture department there. And so they have already got some trials happening that we're using as some of the starting information to leverage from. As you can see, the days that I go to visit the field sites are beautiful sunny days. So if we are continuing to have dry weather, then perhaps I should stay away from some of those sites. But what we're hoping for is that this project will lead to smaller summer feed gaps, and that will then increase the resilience of these grazing enterprises, both to drought and to future climate shifts. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus on in the context of today was how important the Drought Hub has been in terms of being able to develop these different relationships. Most of the people who are partners, as you can see, it's a lot of partners in the project, are actually relationships that have arisen out of this Drought Hub program. And it has, as Fiona and others have been saying, Michael, the collaboration has been amazing. And we have the drought hubs from each of those 4 relevant regions on board and willing to provide some of the access to networks and extension. So you can sort of see the level of impact that having the hubs established has opened these doors for us to be able to have such a complex, ambitious project that is going to have impact across the whole southern suite of Australia in terms of the grazing industries. And so that has really, those doors have really opened as a result of this Drought Hub program. And it's been a really fantastic outcome for us, but I think also for the communities who are going to benefit out of the back of that. So some of those key characteristics, we have drought hubs in 4 states engaged. We've got the relationships with the key partners that did arise from the FDF funded programs. We have that long-term nature of the trial. It is going to go for 5 years. We're already having conversations about potential extensions and who else may be able to co-invest. We've got the holistic approach to measuring the impact, the wellbeing, but also to understand how the responses that we see at the specific trial sites can extend elsewhere. Our design includes farmers from the inception, which I think is a real strength. And we're seeking for our findings to be broadly applicable across Australia and across the relevant industries. And I will leave it there.
Thank you, Rebecca. You get a gold star because we're bang on time.
Bang on
so that
time.
is fantastic. So we won't take any questions now because I would like to keep the day flowing. However, we do have morning tea now, half an hour, so you can collar Rebecca through morning tea if you have questions for her. Can I just thank all of our speakers this morning? Thank you, Vice-Chancellor, for making your time available. The 2 Rebeccas, Fiona, Michael, Ash, hopefully I haven't missed anybody. Great morning session. I think that really set us up for the day. Please enjoy the networking at morning tea. If you could come back here just before 11:20 so we can start on time, that would be awesome. So we're just down the corridor and to the right is